Welcome back to The Critical Gentleman. Today we've got another collection review for you. This one's pretty special. It's actually the collection belonging to a moderator of the R Watches community on Reddit. Earlier this week, Skeptical Jesus contacted me regarding a collection review, so here we go. I hope you enjoy. So we'll start off by taking a look at Skeptical's collection. He's currently got 6 very nice watches, all with varying style that are suited to an array of different situations and attire. If we look top left, we start off strong with a Rolex 2-line no-date Submariner, and I think it's a really nice piece. It's got the older, less chunky lugs, only 2 lines of text. I think overall it is an excellent piece, and if you think back to my 5 Iconic Diver video, you know very well the respect that I have for this Submariner, and the fact that any collection with a sub is certainly off to a great start. Up next are 2 more Rolex, a nice vintage Datejust and an Explorer. These are both really fantastic watches, 36mm cases, right up your alley in terms of that size preference, mine too in fact, and I'm a big fan of the Datejust. I think it's the other classic Rolex after the Submariner. It's really classy. It can be worn with pretty much any outfit. The only thing that I would say is it's not necessarily a sporty watch, but it's somewhere in that casual to dress watch category, very everyday wearable. And the Explorer is another true classic. I mean, a little bit more casual / sporty feel, even more so than the Datejust. I would say the Explorer departs from any semblance really of a dress watch and really takes that kind of tool watch statement to a maximum. Overall, 3 very solid watches, all very versatile, the sub being a great sports or everyday watch, and I think it's really just a fantastic piece. Moving on, we have 2 Nomos. We've got a Tangente and a Metro Gang Reserve. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that correctly because I don't speak German, but the best I can understand is that it shows how much gang you have left. Just kidding. It's a power reserve. So this little mint-colored aperture here reveals a red power indicator underneath, and if I understand correctly, when you see red, that means there is not any power left. In fact, the more white is revealed under that little aperture, the more fully wound the mainspring is in this watch. Now, these are 2 very different yet rather similar watches, and let me explain what I mean by that. Nomos has a certain aesthetic. They're known for their Bauhaus style dials and cases, as well as, of course, their in-house movements. Now, both of these use in-house movements, and I believe the Metro uses a hand-winding caliber, whereas the Tangente uses either manual wind or automatic, depending on which reference you buy. Both of these are fantastically sized, the Tangente at 35mm and the Metro at 37, and both of these kind of have a different feel to them. The Tangente is, of course, a bit more traditional in its styling, and was one of the designs that really put Nomos out there to begin with. I believe the Metro was actually a design collaboration between Nomos and the designer, let's see if I remember his name, Mark Braun. And between the color scheme and the unique style of the hands, as well as the date window at the bottom, it's got its own aesthetic to it. You know, you've got this seconds track around the outer edge of the dial, and it seems to be just a little bit more casual, maybe sporty, whatever adjective you want to use. It's just a little bit more easygoing of a watch than the Tangente and some of the other Nomos line. Also noteworthy, of course, is that it has those wire lugs. And even though I don't own one, I am a big fan of Nomos, so I see no downside really to having more than one of them in the collection, especially when the designs themselves are relatively varied. Last up is the Lonely Omega in the collection, and that is an Aqua Terra with a blue sunburst dial, automatic winding, coaxial, and this is really, I think, one of the top everyday watches on the market right now. I mean, the Aqua Terra is such a solid timepiece in terms of its styling, its size. I believe this one's 38.5mm in the case, and just the overall look. It's really a fantastic watch to be able to strap on no matter what outfit you're wearing, and know that it's going to look sharp and tell great time no matter what you're doing. It's very legible, it's very elegant, and to be honest, it's reasonably priced. You know, these watches are sub 3,000 used, and really pull their weight in terms of aesthetic and timekeeping ability, and the name brand, of course. Everybody knows Omega. So, of course, the question is what to add. Now, Skeptical Jesus has given me a couple of watches he's thinking of adding to the collection. Rolex 1803 day date, the IWC Mark 17, and the Rolex GMT 1675. So before I give any suggestions on what to add to the collection, let's talk about the collection for just a second. My first instinct is to say get the GMT, but then I look at your collection and I notice that half of it is already Rolex. Now, I understand that a lot of collectors like to sort of specialize in terms of a favored brand or one they just sort of accumulate more of generally over other brands. I personally like to have a little variety, and you may notice that in my collection, but I do, of course, gravitate to certain brands. I think I've got more Rolex and Omega than anything else, so there's certainly no shame in duplication. But if you're going to up your collection from 6 to 7 watches, we'll have a majority Rolex should you get one of those two. Now, I do like the GMT. I think it's a little bit sportier. I know you said you prefer dressier watches anyway, so I'm going to try to shy away from too many sports watch suggestions. But I think the GMT kind of fits perfectly in that middle ground between a watch that you can wear every day casually that doesn't necessarily look terribly sporty, and one that's not straight up another dress watch, because you've certainly got a number of them. It also adds a complication to your collection that you don't have, which is a GMT. And I think that when you're looking at a collection of this caliber, you've got some really nice high-end pieces here. There's a lot of different considerations. Of course, do you like the look of the watch? Do you like the brand? Is there a story behind the watch? And one of the things that people often consider is, do I have this complication? Is this a neat function that I want to say I have a watch that does this? A lot of people think that way about chronographs. If you don't like chronographs, then the GMT function is probably one of the other big ones that is not just, in my opinion, actually useful and practical, but adds something overall to both the watch and one's collection. The day date for me, I think, is the biggest question mark. I understand adding that complication as well. It's something that we don't have yet. It's a solid gold piece, so you're adding that precious metal to the collection. That's something worthwhile. But I think that for this money, there are other ways to go aside from yet another Rolex. Now, I've said before that watches are a very individual thing, and of course, if you really, really dig the look of this watch, from the case to the dial to the day-date complication, then certainly go for it. But personally, to me, it's just so similar to the date just that I really would have a hard time recommending such a big cost expenditure for basically a date just in another color. If you're really looking at spending real money on a precious metal dress watch, what I would refer to as a baller status watch, then spend a little more and get a Patek, get a used Calatrava. They're out there under 10K, and I think, it's going to be more than the day date, but now you've really got a legit baller status watch. You've got something unique in your collection. It's adding diversity in terms of brands, and you're getting into a whole new tier of watchmaking. For an amount of money that is not that much greater than you're willing to spend for a day date, I think that a used Patek is at least something worth thinking about. And if the answer is no right off the bat, well, then my question to you is, then why is the day date such a consideration? Is it really the design of that particular watch, or is it just the idea of a solid yellow gold baller status watch? You know what I mean? So I like to kind of think about my motivations for why I want to watch before I really commit to the purchase. Lastly, the IWC Mark 17. This is a really interesting question because a lot of different companies make Flieger-style watches, and the question that I'm always kind of weighing back and forth and that people ask me is, well, should I get the IWC or should I just get a cheaper brand that makes an equally excellent Flieger watch? They pretty much all look the same. And look, the devil's in the details, right? So even if it's a Flieger, if it's not the Flieger that you want, that you think looks fantastic, the one that you're going to croon over and wear every day because it looks amazing on your wrist, then it's not worth saving the money, because ultimately it'll be disappointing and you're either going to have to sell the watch later on or buy the second one in addition. You know, it goes back to that saying, buy once, cry once. So I happen to think that this watch looks awesome. I don't own any Flieger watches. I'm not sure if I will. It's not really one of my favorite styles, but I do like it. I certainly have respect for it. But if I were going to buy one, I like the Mark 17 because it's got this really authentic airplane gauge look to it. Now, I know that that's what the Flieger is based on in the first place. Of course, they're all going to look like that. But the way that the date window is designed with this little red indicator and all the elements come together, you know, it really feels aeronautic to me. It really kind of has an aesthetic to it that a more generic Flieger might not. And then, of course, you also have the prestige of the brand, IWC. But what it really comes down to for me is, am I willing to buy a watch in the $3,000 to $4,000 range that is just a 3-hand, time-only movement with date? And if that's not a problem for you, go for it. But I think that for me, here's my baseline, the Omega Speedmaster. Now, I'm guessing that with a collection like you have, if you don't have a Speedmaster already, it's no accident. You know, you probably chose not to get one, and I'm sure that you have a reason for that. Maybe it's too big, maybe it is a little too sporty for your preferences. But for me, I think the Speedmaster is a great baseline to say, for this money, would I rather have this watch or would I rather just have a Speedy? And I don't think that the Mark 17 is a yes for me. I think it's still in that I'd rather just have a Speedy category. Which brings me to my final point, which is, do you want a Speedmaster? I understand it's a sports watch. I know it's a chrono. I don't know how you feel about that, but it would, 1, add a complication to your collection, 2, fulfill a role that you don't have, which is sort of a more sporty watch. And here's the thing, there's a Speedmaster for everyone, and they've released so many variations on the original Moonwatch. You don't have to get a Moonwatch. You can get any of the designs with any of the dials that are either more dressy, less dressy, or anything. You know, I have a First Omega in space, and I think it's a somewhat dressier Speedmaster. If that's something that you would consider, I think that would really be a great addition to your collection. Those are my suggestions. If you're going to pick one of the 3 that you gave me, I would go with the GMT. Add some color, add a vintage piece, add a complication, or take my suggestion, add a Speedmaster of some variety, and add not just a complication, but also a new role to your collection in the Chronograph sports watch, and maybe not some diversity. It's another Omega, of course, but it would really, I think, expand sort of the feel of the collection away from that dressy element. Now, of course, I have nothing against dress watches. I really very much like them myself. If you're going to go down that road, then instead of that date, how about a vintage Patek? I don't know. Anyway, I know I kind of threw out some crazy ideas in there and strayed away a little bit from what you mentioned to me, but let me know what you guys think. I hope you enjoyed this second collection review. I'll keep pumping them out if you guys want them. If you're interested in having your collection reviewed, send me a message here on YouTube, or you can find me on the R Watches Discord or on Reddit itself. So anywhere I'm around, send me an email or a message here on YouTube, and I will review your collection. Please don't forget to like or subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and come back tomorrow because it is Top 5 Friday, and I will have a really cool Top 5 list for us tomorrow. Thanks for watching.